Hey guys, this is God of Politics and welcome back to a brand new video. In this video, I'm going to be doing another election prediction. This election prediction is for Michael Bloomberg versus Donald Trump. Now, Michael Bloomberg entered into the race late. He is skipping the first four primary states and going directly into the Super Tuesday states. He is actually third in the betting odds ahead of Warren and Buttigieg, and he is officially fourth in the polls ahead of Buttigieg. He has been on a continued rise, similar to Bernie Sanders being on a continued rise for the past couple of months. And there's actually, I believe, a plausible chance that he could become the nominee. He's been campaigning in many states like Texas, California, Florida, Michigan, that no other candidate's really been doing so far. And if we've been seeing a lot of people talking about how the first four states won't matter as much this year, can Michael Bloomberg capitalize on that and get a lot of support uh, in the Super Tuesday states that could propel him to the nomination? Now, we will start off, as always, by filling off the safe states for either candidate. All of these states will be safe: Utah, Alaska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska at large, first and the third district, but not the second district. We'll talk about that. Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, and South Carolina. All these standard states would still go by a safe margin for Donald Trump. You could maybe argue that South Carolina goes likely, or Indiana goes likely, or maybe a couple other states could go likely. Kansas might go likely, but really, that's unrealistic. We'll just put them at safe margins. That puts Donald Trump at 125 safe electoral votes. And for Michael Bloomberg, he would win all of these states safe: Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C. A lot of people have been talking about how Delaware, New Jersey could be closer. Red Eagle Politics talk about that a lot, but I think realistically, especially if Michael Bloomberg is the nominee, he's got a northeastern feel about him. He's from the Northeast, and he'd be able to get the moderate voters out here that maybe voted for somebody like Chris Christie for the New Jersey governor many years ago, as well as Hawaii being safe, as well as Maine's first district being safe. That would put Michael Bloomberg at 183 safe electoral votes to Donald Trump's 125 safe electoral votes. This puts Michael Bloomberg in a pretty good position. He wins the state of Oregon state that doesn't go safe in my predictions to every candidate. He would get almost all of the Northeast safe. He'd be able to win all the big states, obviously California, Illinois, New York. But once we go into the likely and until states, you can see certain states like, we'll start on the Northeast here. Uh, New Hampshire will go by a lean margin. I think you won't see a continuation of the trend red that it had. You see, even in 2016, when Donald Trump did very well in the state, the Democrats flipped a Senate seat back blue. And in the midterms, obviously, the Democrats did very well. Here, Michael Bloomberg's from the Northeast. He's actually born in Massachusetts. I think he'd be able to get a lot of voters from New Hampshire. He'd be very popular amongst them. Still has a lot of name recognition amongst those people, especially, and he'd win the state by a lean margin. I just don't think Donald Trump would put many resources into the state anyway. Maine at large, I believe, would go by a likely margin, and Maine's second district, I believe, would go by a tilt margin. Donald Trump won Maine's second district by like 10 points. It was a huge trend, one of the biggest shocks of the night, other than Donald Trump actually winning the presidency, for Donald Trump to win the second district. Back in 2018, the second district did flip back towards the Democrats, but I think even if you have Michael Bloomberg as the candidate, it'll still go to Donald Trump by a tilt margin, but you'll see Maine at large going by a likely margin. If we go down here to Virginia, I think Michael Bloomberg would win Virginia by a lean margin. I almost want to put this at a likely margin because he is very establishmentarian. He is very moderate. He can attract the moderate voters that elected the Democratic state legislature this year or 2019, for Virginia. Michael Bloomberg would win over many of those people. He just doesn't have the same kind of name recognition yet. That could change easily to get him a larger margin of victory in the state of Virginia, but the state's been trending blue for a while now, and I think that it'll go by a lean margin. State of North Carolina, I believe, would go by a tilt margin. I believe that the state would be very close, closer than a lot of people think. It went by Donald Trump by 5 points. I think went for Mitt Romney by around 2% after going to Obama by less than 1% against McCain. This state I don't think is going to go back blue, even if the Senate seat goes back blue. But you might see that Bloomberg can edge it in closer because maybe a lot of the independents. You remember Michael Bloomberg was an independent up till about 2016 and a Republican up to about 2008, so he shares many of the values, especially economically, to many independents and moderate Democrats in North Carolina. That could make it a tilt margin, make it very close. Instead of Georgia, with all the trends and everything, I think you'll still see it going by a lean margin. You see Michael Bloomberg's support amongst the Democrats, amongst the black community, has doubled since he's entered the race. I think it went from about 7% to 15% or something. That could be because Biden's losing momentum and everything, but I think it's also because of the fact that you see Michael Bloomberg's just establishing himself more amongst the black community. He does have controversial policies like stop and frisk and everything, but I believe that he'd be able to turn them off enough to take advantage of the trends and make it a lean margin, maybe by 3 points or something. But I still think it's too early for the Democrats to flip it yet, and it would still go to Donald Trump. The state of Florida, I believe, would go by a tilt margin. Often, Michael Bloomberg calls Florida the sixth borough of New York. Obviously, he was the mayor of New York City, and there's a lot of people there that go to Florida, especially Jewish people. Michael Bloomberg is Jewish. He'd be able to get a lot of the vote down there that Donald Trump is actually vying to get right now with his Israel policies, with his Middle Eastern policies. But I think that Donald Trump would still be able to, in the state, the incumbency advantage, the home field advantage. It's his home now. His residency, Mar-a-Lago and everything. But I think that Michael Bloomberg would make this state more in play than almost any other candidate, maybe Joe Biden. I believe at the end of the day, the state would go by a tilt margin still. One of the last states called it a night, but it would still go to Donald Trump. The state of Texas, I also believe, not going to put it at a tilt margin yet, but similar to Georgia, I'll put it at a lean margin. You might argue that if you have a candidate like Michael Bloomberg in the future, they can flip this state towards the blue column, maybe in the future. I'm skeptical of it, but I think maybe. You saw the 28th House district in Texas. The Republicans swamped it out despite being outspent 3-1. That was an impressive victory for Republicans, but Michael Bloomberg is a candidate that, in my opinion, would be able to do well in Texas. You see in the polls, he's only down by 1 to 2 points, and I think those are a bit unrealistic, but I think that at the end of the day, you see Hillary Clinton lost it by 9 after Obama lost it by 17 to Romney. You see that there is a trend there. Beto O'Rourke got it really close against an unpopular senator, and Michael Bloomberg would be able to get it closer, but probably only about 4 or 5 points maybe, but still by a lean margin nonetheless. I think Colorado would go likely, New Mexico would also go likely. I think they would be less aware of the name recognition, but I believe that since he's a moderate Dem, he'd be able to attract a lot of the swing voters that went to the Democrats in the wave year last time. He'd be able to turn out a lot of voters, especially in Colorado, to unseat Cory Gardner and things like that. And obviously, states like Colorado are trending more blue. Same thing with New Mexico, trending more blue. Got the second district in New Mexico to flip to the blue column, despite being a very Trump district. Bloomberg would, in my opinion, would be able to turn out those voters to him rather than to Trump again. And that would give Michael Bloomberg a likely victory in both of these states. I also believe Arizona would be very, very, very close. I think it'll be a tilt margin to Donald Trump, but I think it'll be very close. You saw some of the polls from this. It has Bloomberg down by about 1, but I think that as Bloomberg establishes more name recognition, if he were to be the nominee, he can pitch his moderate policies. And remember, he has so much money. He is able to outspend Donald Trump by a lot. He has a lot more money than Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's a billionaire. But Michael Bloomberg has $50 billion. He will spend a lot of that on this campaign, attacking Donald Trump where it hurts, the debt, healthcare, wherever you think. It would hurt Donald Trump, and that's what Michael Bloomberg will do. He will do that in states like Arizona, where you see the trends going more to the blue column. But I think at the end of the day, it's still just a tiny bit too early to flip. But this could easily flip to Michael Bloomberg, in my opinion. I believe that Nevada would go lean. As I've said before, this was considered a swing state in 2016, one of the few swing states that actually went to Hillary Clinton. Some people are saying that the state could go towards Donald Trump in 2020, but I just believe that the suburbs would go so heavily for Michael Bloomberg, the moderate suburbs here, that he would win it by a lean margin. I think Iowa would go by a lean margin as well as Ohio going by a lean margin. I think this would be a similar result to 2016, but a bit closer, because you see that he won both of these states by 10 and 9 respectively. And I think that it might be a bit closer than that just due to his approval ratings, the farmers and everything. Bloomberg would be able to run a lot of ads on that and everything like that. But Donald Trump, this is Trump territory. He'd still be able to win these states regardless. I believe the second district would go tilt. A similar result, maybe you could see this go blue like it did in 2008, but at the end of the day, I think it'll still stay tilt. A bit of a closer version than Iowa. I said in Minnesota, I believe it would go lean. You could also almost put this as a likely. A similar results maybe Tina Smith in the Wavier, who won by 10 in a special election when the Republicans didn't feel that good of a candidate, but Tina Smith still won by 10 points. It was a Wavier, but Klobuchar also won 30 points that time. Hillary Clinton also won one of the few swing states that was there. It was the one that got away from Trump, but Hillary still won that. I think Michael Bloomberg would do the same, probably by a greater margin, probably by 3 or 4 points for Michael Bloomberg. And now we get to these three states, the three states that I always get to. And I think that Wisconsin would go by a tilt margin, Pennsylvania would also go by a tilt margin, and Michigan would go by a lean margin. You see in Michigan, they've got John James in running for the Senate election in 2018. He lost by 7 points to Debbie Stabenow, the long-term incumbent senator. It was a wave year, but Debbie Stabenow won by 7 points. They won a majority of the House districts here. You've got Justin Amash, who went away from the Republicans, is now an independent. And this is a traditionally blue state. Obama won the state by 17 points in 2008. And this is a more moderate Democratic state, but it still is a Democratic state regardless. Part of the blue wall is what they called it. Michael Bloomberg was able to win these districts. You see in Wisconsin as well, they flipped a governor seat. They unseated Scott Walker. I think Michael Bloomberg will be able to replicate a result like that. And Donald Trump is very unpopular in these states. He won't be able to attract enough voters from him in these suburbs, where I think Michael Bloomberg will do especially well. And since they have a lower black population compared to some other states like Georgia and places like that, Michael Bloomberg would be able to do well amongst the older voters, turn the voters out, the voters that may turn out for Trump, the moderate voters that may not go out at all. And it'll be interesting to see how much the millennial vote he can turn out, how much he can excite them. But I believe that the amount of money he'll be spending on ads and everything like that would push him over the top at the end of the day. This puts Michael Bloomberg at 278 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 260 electoral votes. This would make Michael Bloomberg the 46th president of the United States. He would spend a lot of money for it, but at the end of the day, I think he would get it. He could even win states like Florida or Arizona. I think Donald Trump should be very scared of Michael Bloomberg just because of the immense power he has in this election, and he'll be spending a lot of money regardless of whether he wins the nomination or not. But yeah, this is the result that I would predict. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you guys later.